You want shirts? I got shirts.
It's only a game. Why you have to be mad?
What is up, heroes of Dominion? My name is Charlie. This is Hero Wars Central, and today's video we're going to talk a little bit about positioning with your 5-hero team. But before we get into that part of the video, I just want to take a second and thank you. I want to thank all of you, my fantastic community, my subscribers, my patrons. You guys are awesome. I passed 20,000 subscribers today, and about a week ago, maybe 10 days ago, I passed 1.5 million total views. I think that I'm almost at 1.6 million views. It's just kind of crazy. 1.5 and a half. We'll just call it that. It really blows my mind how far we've come, and I'm not even a year into this channel, and I feel like I'm just getting started. So let's get into it. So the reason why I thought about doing this video is actually two different reasons. The first is my buddy Arcana and I were having a discussion about Daredevil a little while ago. About a couple of weeks ago, I did a Daredevil plus Elmer combo video on for the mobile version of the platform, and talking about how Elmer jumping to the back supports Daredevil's blue ability. The name of the ability escapes me right now, but how it triggers that ability, but it's actually more effective when Daredevil is in the third position. It hardly triggers the ability, if at all, if Daredevil is in the fourth position. So it's important to build your team in a way to actually let your fun combos and your fun synergies actually work together. So let's dig into a couple of those interesting synergies. I don't want to do a full-blown combo video on these synergies because they're very small, but they are useful to know. And it's also a great reason behind why a lot of teams are built the way that they are. So whenever we're talking about synergy, we mentioned Daredevil already, but I want to talk a little bit about two heroes that are very important that a lot of people level up. And the first one is Nebula. Now, Nebula's got this ability called Equilibrium. It's her Violet ability. And what this says is Nebula's basic attacks will be switched to support mode. And with every activation, Nebula increases the physical and magical attack of one nearby ally by 5 seconds. Now, this doesn't really explain how it works, but what we know is that it usually triggers the fronts and behind of her in the lineup. So if Nebula is between, say, Kark and Faceless, it'll bounce between Kark and Faceless. However, in some instances, like if she's in the very back of the team, or if you're using a wonky lineup like with Nebula Sebastian for whatever reason, Nebula Sebastian Jet for some reason it does this. I'm sorry, Kira Nebula Sebastian Jet, I should say that. It will bounce between two other heroes. So it's always two. And if Nebula is in the very back, often what will happen is it'll bounce between the next two heroes in front of her. So it's an interesting team idea to have Nebula in the back, being that she's a midline hero. It means you have to have a lot of tanks and a lot of warriors, or at least a lot of marksmen that are fighting up front in order to get her to be fully utilized. And of course, you want to make sure that she lands next to the two damage dealing heroes that you want to land her with, or you'll end up with her being less effective. And that kind of brings me to part 2 of Nebula, why I don't use Kai in my Kark team, and why a lot of Kark teams don't use Kai anymore and they use Faceless and Nebula instead. And the reason for that is Kai will actually do some great knockup damage. Yes, very synergistic with Kark. However, the damage buff, that equilibrium that Nebula provides Kark, is greater than the single purpose damage that Kai provides. Nebula provides healing, a little bit of healing. She provides energy burn with her ultimate. She provides debuff removal with her, I believe it's her Serenity ability. And not to mention the huge plus damage increase that she does to the hero in front of and behind. If you had Kai on the team, it actually pushes Nebula away from Kark. And similarly to that setup, a lot of teams with Kira will try to use Celeste in that team for whatever reason. They like using Celeste and Kira together, but that will actually push Nebula away from Kira if you put Celeste in there. So you got to be careful how you're positioning your Nebula to make sure that she's effectively buffing the heroes that you want her to buff. Maybe you want her to buff the healer in the back. Maybe you want her to buff your support hero, your Celeste, or your maybe your Kai. So, keep that in mind as you're building the team. The next most popular hero that I wanted to talk about is Dorian. And Dorian's initiation ability says that it increases vampirism of nearby allies. And a lot of people compare Dorian and Nebula's buffs to each other. Initiation can target your whole team if the team is set up properly. If it's set up properly, then it will, the whole team will be effective. Now, what a lot of people don't seem to get is that the vampirism is helpful for heroes that have vampirism, such as Galahad, Cleaver, Ishmael. However, whenever his ultimate goes off, casts a blood mark on the nearest rival for 7 seconds, allies recover health whenever they attack a marked enemy. That is the vampirism that initiation will gain. So it doesn't really matter where Dorian is in the lineup. The healing will work well. However, the heroes that are closest to Dorian, such as a Helios Orion team, they'll benefit from the initiation aura, as well as the Fountain of Blood ability as well. And of course, it doesn't really matter when you fire this off because Dorian's ability will work even after he is dead. Which brings me to another interesting point about Dorian's positioning. If you're going up against a very strong cleaver and you happen to have a Dorian that's in the back, I know sometimes Helios or Martha will push Dorian forward, then having Dorian against cleaver, even if Dorian dies, cleaver will pull Dorian to the front into the middle of all of your team. And, then Dorian will die. Eventually he will die. He's a squishy healer. But then that blood aura, that initiation, will stay active the whole time. It'll stay active the whole time. So it's a nice little buff to have against a hero like Cleaver. And while we're talking about healers, I quickly want to mention Martha. And the other reason why I wanted to do this video is because I believe tomorrow the Hero Wars mobile platform will have the Lucas/Martha event. And it's going to be a fun little event, not unlike I think it was the Lilith and Vari. Was it Lilith and Vari event? Maybe it was Lilith Sebastian. I can't remember. It was like there was 2 heroes that you could get soul stones for. Anyway. So Martha is effective as a healer, extremely effective as a healer. One of the big reasons why she's so effective is because she ends up behind a lot of other heroes. She pushes a lot of other heroes forward. In the case of my Kark team, I really like using her because it pushes Faceless forward. Faceless is kind of a squishy target, pushes Faceless forward. If I was using Jorgen or, let's say, Kai instead of Martha, if I was going pure output, then Faceless would be in the back. If I was using the Helios version, Helios, which is a squishy target, Helios would be in the back. And Martha is a good inclusion into a Helios team if you're going up against a high crit team that you can't seem to stay alive against, such as like a Kira mixer team or a high damage output, Daredevil team. Martha is really fantastic in shoring up that back end, keeping you safe. Very strong against Cleaver as well, because if she gets pulled forward, she's kind of tanky. She can take a couple of hits before she gets knocked over. So kind of fun there. The other hero in the event is Marcus, and Marcus would be stellar. He would be amazing. He's got survivability. He's got a crazy set of glyphs, which I hope they change. He's got some great heals now that he's being updated, at least on mobile. However, one of his abilities will send out a wave of healing energy in front of him and not behind him. Not behind him. It's his green ability, Righteous Light. Marcus launches a wave of light forward, healing allies and dealing damage to enemies. The damage part is great because, damages enemies in front of him. However, the heal tends to not hit that many people as he's a frontline character. He is a healer support frontline character, and he's pretty tanky. He could be considered on par tankiness with Martha. However, if he was midline, if he was a midline character, a middle slot character, it would be so much better. Or if he was a rear, like a paladin healer kind of situation, he would be so much better. So wonky placement for Marcus, really great placement with Martha. Just a couple of weird layouts there. So the next thing that I kind of want to talk about is Lian. Now, Lian is a fun hero in that she is all about putting the enemy to sleep. And the main use for Lian is to really control area of effect damage dealers, such as the Kira team, but she cannot be hooked by Cleaver's hook at all. So her Violet ability states that when she is damaged, the enemy who dealt damage is charmed for 4 seconds. So Anytime that Cleaver tries to hook Lian, if Lian is in the back, she will put Cleaver to sleep, and the hook will not go off. So if you're trying to protect yourself from a Cleaver team, at least the Cleaver hook, and you don't have Dorian, maybe try Lian. Lian will prevent that from happening, and it's all because Lian is in the back. However, if you're going up against a Jew team, she may chew up Lian. I'm sorry, she may chew up Jew before he can do as much damage. However, Jew does a lot of damage really fast to rear heroes, may overpower her altogether. So another fun location-based layout to think about. So I mentioned earlier the Daredevil positioning, third position versus fourth position. Depending on the team that you have, and this is for mobile guys, as the Facebook version of Daredevil is garbage and I don't want to talk about her. But on mobile, the team that you have, if you're including Elmer with Daredevil, then you're going to want to try to get Daredevil to be in the third position. And depending on what heroes you have, what size of sprites that you have, the physical actual size of the image, it's going to affect whether or not Elmer's ability will trigger her. And if she's not in the third position, it might not work at all. It might not work at all depending on the team that you've got. So kind of keep that in mind. You want to always be mindful. You always want to test your heroes in whatever means you can via, guild fights, or if you're on Facebook, then try it on the max level testing. Test your heroes to make sure that they work in the position that you think it's going to work. So let's talk a little bit about sprite size. I mentioned that earlier, and when I'm saying sprite, I'm referring to the actual digital image of the hero in the fight, in the arena, in the grand arena, in the guild war arena, whatever you want to call it. And this is kind of an interesting concept that's kind of hard coded into the game that you can get around, that you can't really get around, I should say. Excuse me. And it's the number one thing that affects Dorian's aura size. Depending on how far away the midline heroes are, they may or may not be affected by Dorian's aura. Sometimes they are if they're a smaller hero. Sometimes they're not. An interesting fact about hero size or sprite size: if you're trying to counter a Kark team with Anvari, you have to use a tank. If you're going to use a tank at all, you have to use a tank that's on the larger side, because if the tank is too small, say if you're using Astaroth or if you're using Galahad, maybe Zeri, really you want to use Cleaver if you're going to use Anvari to counter a Kark team. If the actual size of the tank is small enough, then Kark will cleave, and that means hit multiple enemies at once whenever he does his basic attacks, and he will over time drop Anvari's health just by doing regular basic attacks, to the point that he will knock up Anvari whenever he does his ultimate. Now, if you're doing a really fast, high damage output team, such as the Kira Mixer team, then it's going to be a non-issue, because usually you're going to kill the Kark team before they have an opportunity to get there. But it's worth mentioning that you want to pay attention to heroes that can do, swiping damage or cleave damage to kind of mitigate that with a larger tank up front, such as Chaba or, Cleaver. Something to think about. Talking about Helios. So if you're going up against a high crit damage team, you want to use Helios, as Helios has abilities that will counter crit damage. It counters a lot of physical teams. Helios is a armor artifact weapon, in fact. And if you use Helios, but you're going up against the team that can kill him quick because they've got Cleaver, or maybe they just have enough damage output and you haven't leveled up your healer enough, you haven't leveled up your Helios enough to withstand much damage, then you can sub in a hero behind Helios, such as maybe Martha. I think Martha is actually the only hero that fits behind Helios. That'll push Helios forward. So if you're running the Orion, Dorian, Helios team, and you keep losing to Cleaver teams, you might want to sub Martha in there and do, tank Dorian, Orion, Helios, and then Martha in the back, or tank Orion, Dorian, Helios, Martha in the back. And that could be a little weird, but it pushes Helios forward, giving Helios a little bit more time to do damage and protect your team. So a lot of interesting positioning requirements go into this game, especially whenever you're looking at some of these meta teams that are popular, that have been popular for a very long time. And but if you're really trying to min-max, if you're really trying to be the best that you can be, you need to be very mindful not only of your team synergy, all physical damage, all magic damage. You need to be mindful of your combos between heroes using, Kark and Faceless together, or the Orion, Dorian, Helios team together, or maybe, Nebula and any damage dealer in front of or behind her. But you also need to be extremely mindful of positioning. Dorian is probably the best healer in the game if positioning was not a factor, but it is a factor. So he's not the best healer in the game because you got to position him in just such a way. Martha's very strong tanky in the back. She's a strong healer as well, but her tankiness and the fact that she's in the very back of all heroes makes her utility just that much stronger. Anvari is a strong anti-Kark team, but he's much better behind a fat tank like Rufus or Cleaver. Lots of stuff to think about whenever you're building a team, but there's a lot of great help out there. That's the good news. So jump in the Discord, jump on Reddit, jump on, onto the Facebook groups. Check out the different team strategies that Tim put together. And on screen here, I'm going to show you Tim's spreadsheet where you can see a lot of the teams, a lot of the meta teams that are put together, and you can also see the team positions. You can see all the positions that are in the game, starting with Chaba being at the very front, all the way to Martha being in the very, very back. But with all that being said, this is by far my longest video I've ever recorded. I just kind of got on a rant. I hope you guys found it useful, at least interesting to listen to. Thank you so much, Arcana, for prompting me to make a video like this, and good luck gathering Martha stones on mobile. I know that this is a long time coming for some of you guys that have never had a chance to get Martha. And on screen I've got a couple of videos that you might want to watch that might be interesting to you. And if you do watch those, great. If not, that's okay. Thank you so much for 20,000 subscribers, 1.5 million views. Man, I really love you guys. I really do. But good luck in Dominion.